you want Q&A to start with, or do you want to just dive right into the roadmap stuff?
Thank you.
Roadmap. All right, cool. So I don't have a presentation, so I'm going to sort of go off the cuff here and just sort of give a little bit of background over the last year. That will be quick, I promise, and then what we're doing next. So a year, maybe a little bit over that ago in Ansible Core, we effectively sort of divided our strategy up into 5 sort of legs, and that's the engine, which you all know about, Ansible Windows, Ansible Container, Ansible Cloud, and Ansible Networking. To various degrees, some of those have been a spectacular success and some less so. Ansible Networking is now one of our fastest growing products. Ansible Windows has been oddly a huge home run for us. I don't know what the proper metaphor for that is here, but some 50% of the people we sell to use Windows, from varying degrees of 1% to 100%, but what we've learned is that nobody will buy a config tool or use a config tool broadly in an organization that doesn't do both. So Windows, ironically, has been a very big strategic investment for us and for Red Hat. And so going forward from those, we're still working on all 5 of those. 2.5 Ansible is due out in March. We went into freeze last week, the 22nd, whatever that was. I've lost track of time. So next year. Now we're looking at next year and the next really 18 months and what bits of infrastructure in the Ansible world are really important. The next big release we're doing, due out in June, is largely going to be a maintenance and hardening release, fixing a lot of API stuff, fixing a lot of bugs that have been persistent. Some of you have run into major performance issues with include role and some deep copy stuff that we're doing, and so we're cleaning that up and fixing that. We did OpenShift found a memory leak that caused a particular class to go from 96 megs to 15 gigs. So that was kind of a big problem. We're working on that stuff. In the general strategy sense, we're going to focus on the same things, and we're going to add one big one, which is really around security. A lot of people are coming to us, that being Red Hat and Ansible, and saying, we already use Ansible to config our fleet. Now we want to do it with security. And there's really 2 things to break down in security in Ansible, and that's things you can do with the engine and content you can deliver that runs on the engine. So we're working on a roadmap for security in the engine side, things like Bastion host support and that sort of thing. And then we're going to be working on a lot of content across all of Red Hat. Dimitri, are you in here? He's in. I don't know. I thought I saw him come in. Anyway, a lot of people are working on different content to deliver security remediation to Ansible customers. OpenSCAP, Insights, you can talk about a little bit. So security is going to be a big add this year. VMware is another one we're doing a lot of cleanup on. That was kind of a mess. And then basically continue to evolve the engine significantly. And then internally in Red Hat, we're doing a lot of strategic work to integrate Ansible with OpenShift. So for the next 6 months, Ansible's chief architect, Jimmy Camerata, is going to be sitting down and pretty much just side by side working with Clayton Coleman and his team to use Ansible for day 2 operations, post-install and post-setup of OpenShift. So that's orchestrating apps, orchestrating clusters and higher order functions in OpenShift. And then Adam Miller, who many of you know from the Fedora team, recently came over to the Ansible core team, and he's going to be working with the OpenShift team to clean up the installer. Right now, I think it takes something like 30 hours to install Ansible, and the objective is to get it down to 5 minutes. And obviously, that's a big difference. So there's now a completely separate team being run by Eric Paris on that effort, and Adam Miller is going to be on loan to that team to clean that up. Questions about core strategy while I'm up here and before we switch? Anybody? Okay, that's easy.
Yeah, or just general questions on Ansible.
Or general questions on Ansible and Tower.
Chris Houseknecht is here. He's going to get started.
So I will,
while we get set up,
gladly hand this off to Chris. Feel free to find me. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
So for now, Ansible works like you have remote hosts, many of them, and you manage the inventory and you do run some tasks on the host. Like if I have OpenShift, for example, I don't have hosts anymore. I have definitions for certain containers which I manage. Is it the use case for Ansible as well, or like not working with this remote stuff, like doing changes on particular fixed hosts, but managing definitions of the containers and applying jobs to cluster?
Yeah, I mean, the answer is yes, maybe. I mean, we literally just had our first planning meeting around all this 2 weeks ago, so we're trying to figure out what that looks like, but that's a very good use case for what we're thinking about doing.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
Go ahead. You got it.
Hi, I'm Jag. So one of the things that you will see in 2.5, I think it made it in 2.5, is so right now there's a connection plugin for being able to, instead of using SSH to talk to target systems, using the Docker engine. We're expanding that to other container engines, including kube control. So you will be able to, through your inventory, identify the pods and containers that you do want to talk to, and using the kube control connection plugin, you'll be able to apply Ansible content to those target machines. The caveat is that the same rules apply to target machines using Ansible over SSH. You need to have Python, you need to have the available Python utilities in your target machines for Ansible to be able to manage them for you.
General about if I have to choose Chef versus Ansible, means why Ansible?
Which versus Ansible?
Chef.
Chef?
Yeah.
Oh, well, you know, I mean, there's a million different reasons. As many people here know, I used to be the VP of engineering at Puppet as well, and I've also used Chef quite a bit. You know, there's all sorts of reasons why people choose one over the other. One of the biggest reasons we see people choose Ansible over Chef is really about writing programming languages. A lot of people who are sysadmins don't want to write code to deploy fleets and manage fleets. Ansible is a very simple descriptor of what infrastructure should look like. And you know, in my experience, most sysadmins don't want to know the difference between the two types of white space arrays in Ruby to figure it out. And so that's a big one. You know, some of it's the agentless model that's been very successful for us. You know, a good sort of orthogonal example is somebody wants to use a config tool to manage their networking fleet and their regular fleet of infrastructure, and they don't want two tools to do it. And so there really is no networking administrator we've found that will install an agent on a networking, I don't like a Cisco device. And so the ability to basically look at infrastructure as ubiquitous is a big advantage for Ansible, and SSH and WinRM make that pretty simple. So.
And for middleware perspective, do you have something for mid-range, like Apache, MQ?
Maybe. I was just informed by my boss that I need to spend a bunch more time with the middleware guys. So come back and talk to me next year, and I might have a better answer for that one. And roles, yeah. House will talk about that a bit. Oh, yeah.
So will you be expanding the engineering team who is working on modules?
So I'm, you know, that's a very broad. Hello? I don't know if I turned, okay. You know, I don't even know now, I think there's 1,400 modules now that distribute with Ansible. And House, I may be messing up House's presentation a little bit, but the thing we haven't done well at all over the last 2 years is content delivery. And by that I mean the ability to get artifacts, whether they're roles, modules, or plugins, to users in a community-based way. Everything's a walled garden, everything's included with Ansible as a package, and you get this kitchen sink thing with all sorts of packages. I mean, you get like OSX Speak, which is, I think, it's like a module that reads Shakespeare plays to you or something. You know, nobody needs that or wants it. And so Galaxy is going to be driven by House, and we're revamping that to basically create an installer so that not only do you get the core modules that we'll be working on, but you can easily get a curated list of modules that's valuable to people, whether it's supported by us or Cisco, whether it's good. You know, there's already, I don't know, 1,000 Nginx modules or roles on Galaxy, and 999 of them suck. And so curation of that is important. Internally, for the support of our supported roles, which may be what you're asking about, we are expanding some of that team. James Tanner over there is constituting a team called Core Engine Maintenance, which their job is to increase support at the post-support level for supporting modules, supporting engine, and integrations of those things. Did I actually answer the question you wanted? Okay, good. Anybody else before I hand it off? Okay, you ready, House? No. Okay, then, okay, joke time. What did the short guy do?
Is anyone using Windows?
Yeah, anybody here use Windows? Run, yeah. Do you use Ansible? You look so excited about it. Do you use Ansible with your Windows fleet?
I'm trying, but there are, I'd say, many rough corners.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, we're trying to clean it up, so I'll give you a card. Let me make sure I give you a card, and let's connect up, find out what the rough corners are. We're happy to work on them. Yeah.
Is Ansible supported under Mac too?
It is, so we do test it in our testing infrastructure, but we do not officially support it in the sales sense. Is that right? I think so. So yeah, I know that's right. So you know, it's tested in the sense, we make sure that as a control machine in particular, it works. If you buy Ansible engine, you cannot buy support for OS X.
I have some projectors which turn off this.
Okay. I don't know what you mean.
Anybody else? Tower questions for last guy? He's not doing enough work here.
I know.
Yeah. AWX, excuse me.
So what do I do?
About AWX.
Cool. Anybody using Ansible networking here?
Oh, sorry, it's not the same.
Wow. Not a one. Maybe I'm overstating the success of that one. All right, there's one. Whew. Save me, dude. I owe you a beer later. All right, looks like House is coming up. I'll get out of the way.
All right, maybe it'll work.
Thank you.
Sorry I'm late. I'm not feeling well at all, so kind of over. All right, no presentation. What I was going to talk about was things that you can do with roles that you might not think about, might not know about. So who here has written a role, an Ansible role? All right, everybody. You guys are probably all experts. You're going to be like, what are you talking about? I do this all the time. I don't know how I'm going to do this without like something to demo. So how many of you know that you can ship modules with a role? A few of you know. Where do you put your modules? All right. So you can stick a library directory in your role, and you can put custom modules in there. And starting in, I think it was Ansible 2.4, you could actually add a module utils directory to your role as well. So you can ship common code. And a lot of people don't really think about that and what that means. You can also ship plugins. So you can have a connection plugin, which I was going to show a custom connection plugin, some custom modules, and a lookup plugin. How many of you guys have used a lookup plugin? A few of you have. So you can actually ship all those things with a role. And what that means is you can distribute those things through Galaxy. And you don't have to, everybody wants to write a module and push it into Ansible core. And it takes a while to get it, through the process of getting it into core. And rightly so, right? Because we're kind of gatekeepers, and we have standards we want to meet, and we also have release schedules. So you may want to get your role out there tomorrow. For your users, you're all excited, or your module, your plugins out there tomorrow for your potential users, because you're all excited about it. But we're not going to release software like Ansible 2.5 is not coming out till like March-ish. So you'd be kind of waiting around for us. So you can short circuit all that by actually putting those things in Galaxy. Just stick them in a role, put it in Galaxy, it'll be indexed. So I was going to show you what that looked like and how to do that. Unfortunately, I don't think the display is going to cooperate. The next thing I was going to talk about was when we run Ansible Galaxy init, we get this sort of default structure. And we stick a main.yaml file in all of those places, right? So we've got vars, defaults, tasks, files. I'm trying to think what are the other directories in there. Oh, meta main.yaml, sure. You got to have that though, or it's not a role. And so we kind of think, well, okay, that's it, right? I got my sample README, and I'm just going to fill that out. And I'm here to give you permission to delete those extra directories. And you can also add files. So when you install a role, the entire repository gets downloaded in a tarball and exploded. So any files that you put in there, in that role, come along for the ride. And so I think because what I was going to talk about with that structure is we're kind of afraid to deviate from it, I think. And working on Galaxy, I see lots of roles. And I was going to show you some examples of what I think are kind of good roles and not so good roles. Lots of people will just put all their tasks in that one main.yaml file. But you can actually take your tasks, as you probably already know, and break them up, right? And so we came up with import and include. Who knows the difference between import and include? Who's going to be brave? So with import is static, right? If I want to import tasks, it's static in the sense that that task file that I want to import has to exist up front when the playbook is being parsed or when the role is being parsed. And so if you try to run a role, and I was actually going to demo this, if you try to run a role and the task that you're importing isn't there, it errors. So the way around that is to use an include. So you can do include tasks, and it's dynamic. And I always wondered, well, what does that mean? What's the difference between static and dynamic? And it used to be that you would do an import, and you would actually have to say, static yes or no. And then we came up with include. So we have import tasks and include tasks. And with include tasks, my task file doesn't actually have to be there until right before, right at execution time, which means I could actually generate a task file on the fly. So I could go do some work, gather some facts, and actually template out, using the template module, a task file. And then in real time, as it's running, that template happens, the task file shows up, and it executes immediately, and then I can delete it. So you can do all kinds of fun things with that. So I was going to actually demo that, but unfortunately, I can't. The next thing, I'm trying to remember what was the next slide. Tags. How many people here use tags? That's good. Most people don't use tags. And I think it's good practice to use tags. Do you guys put your tags down at the task level? Or do you put them at an include file level? What's that? Everywhere. Okay. So there's actually a difference between how import tasks and include tasks work when you apply tags. So if you're doing import tasks and you stick tags on that import task, it actually, the tag cascades down. So it applies that tag to all of your tasks within that task file. And so if you're trying to, narrow down, I want to run a specific set of tasks, it becomes difficult if you're using import. If you use include, it's a little bit easier. It doesn't cascade down. The tag statement only applies to that include task. And actually to get that include task to run, you have to include the tag on that and then any tags on the lower level tasks. So I was going to show the difference between that, how that works. I think a lot of people don't use tags because they're kind of like, I don't know, it's not consistent, I'm not sure. And it's not consistent because sometimes you're probably using import and sometimes you're probably using include, and you get different behaviors. I think the last slide I had was about documentation. So when we do Ansible Galaxy init, we get a README file. And some people write a bunch of stuff in that README file. Some people don't write so much. None of us as developers are great writers. So when we write our documentation for a role, we think about our use case. We think about how we're intending to use the role. And we throw on there the list of options, but we kind of explain it. Nobody gives any examples. And I think the best thing you can do with a role, like I said before, any of the files that you put in the repository actually come along for the ride when you install the role. So what does that mean? That means you can put a sample playbook in there. And it also means that you can put sample data in there. So I was going to show you a role that I wrote for a presentation I'm giving later today. Hopefully the display will work. And what I did was I have this sort of complex data structure. So I'm going to set up my AWX instance using Tower CLI. Anybody here know what Tower CLI is? A couple people. Of course, Laska knows. So the premise is if I install AWX, it's empty. How do I populate it quickly? And if you've looked at AWX at all and kind of poked around, you know that when we issue new releases, we don't guarantee that you'll be able to upgrade from one release to the next. So my workaround for that is I'll just keep all of my data outside of AWX. And if I want to install a new version, I don't really care. I'll blow away my old version, spin up a new one, and then I can just run my playbook, my role, and it'll import all of my users, my credentials, my inventory, everything I need, right? I can set that all up. Well, I have a data structure that's, a list of organizations, a list of users, a list of credentials, and each of those things is a map of key value pairs. And if you've worked with YAML at all, like if you're trying to do things with long text strings across multiple lines, there's sort of weird ways. Use, I think it's the greater than sign, and then you can put that blob of text, or sometimes you use a pipe. And so there's no way for me to explain to you in a README how to set this all up, right? So I gave you a sample data file. And I just point to that in my README. So you get a sample playbook that you can copy outside the role. It's all set up, ready to go. And a sample data file, you can go in and just set your passwords, put your values in there, and it's like simple, done. You don't have to think about how do I format all this stuff? How do I get my SSH key in there? I've already done all that work for you. And I think most of us, when we're writing roles, we tend not to think that way. And then we put our role out there, and maybe people use it, maybe they don't. If I don't give you a sample of how to populate this data structure, you're probably not going to use it. You're going to get frustrated, or you're going to open up issues, and it'll take me weeks before I get around to replying to your issue. So my role is going to go nowhere. I think that's mostly what I had. It would have gone on longer had I been able to do some demos, but anyone have any questions about roles? Sure.
Basic question about your architecture roles. If you write your own roles, it's fairly easy to follow what you do and how it works. But if you are in a group of multiple people working on a role, and you have to pick up work that somebody else put in a role, it's, for me, I don't know if it's the same way for others, it's almost impossible to figure out what that guy thought because it's so complicated. Because there's a role to that YAML file pointing to a variable file is there with references to another role which is in a different directory and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, include roles.
Any possibility to
role
get
include.
that sorted and made that readable?
No. I mean, I would say that's on your side, right? It's all in how you organize things. So we give you a lot of power with a role. And I was observing yesterday, sitting down writing a role, like, I don't really need to write a module anymore. If you're writing modules, if that's your first choice, you're doing it wrong. Because, like you said, you have so much power with, import tasks, include tasks, role include. So you can pull in a piece of someone else's role in meta main.yaml. You can put dependencies. So you can have a hierarchy of roles. So you have a lot of power. And with that, of course, you can do things horribly, and it becomes difficult for people to come along behind you and understand what the heck you were thinking. Does anyone use include vars? A few people have. So you can literally include a whole directory of variable files. And there's 15 different options around include vars, and it's dynamic. So you can do things on the fly, generate variable files, and then include them and then use them. So you can do all kinds of crazy stuff. And so it's like you can now program inside of a role. So that's good and bad. Anyone else have questions? Sure.